So we are on chapter 9, Bhagavad-Gita, in the matter of the most confidential knowledge. Text 34, the last text in this chapter. Manmana bhava mad bhakto madhyaji mam namaskuru mang vivaishyasa yuktvaivam atmanam matparyanaha. Manmana bhava mad bhakto madhyaji mam namaskuru mam evaishyasi yuktvaivam atmanam matparayanaha. Matmana, always thinking of me. Bhava, become. Mat, my. Bhakta, devotee. Mat, my. Yaji, worshipper. Mam, unto me. Namaskuru, offer obeisances. Mam, unto me. Eva, completely. Eshyasi, you will come. Yuktva, being absorbed. Evam, thus. Atmanam, your soul. Matparayanaha, devoted to me. The text. Engage your mind always in thinking of me. Become my devotee. Offer obeisances to me and worship me. Being completely absorbed in me, surely you will come to me. Purport. In this verse, it is clearly indicated that Krishna consciousness is the only means of being delivered from the clutches of this contaminated material world. Sometimes unscrupulous commentators distort the meaning of what is clearly stated here, that all devotional service should be offered to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. Unfortunately, unscrupulous commentators divert the mind of the reader to that which is not at all feasible. Such commentators do not know that there is no difference between Krishna's mind and Krishna. Krishna is not an ordinary human being. He is absolute truth. His body, his mind, and he himself are one and absolute. It is stated in the Kurma Purana, as quoted by Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami in his Anubhasya comments on Chaitanya Charitamrita, Dehadihi vibhedo yang nishvari vidyate kvachit. This means that there is no difference in Krishna, the Supreme Lord, between himself and his body. But because the commentators do not know the science of Krishna, they hide Krishna and divide his personality from his mind and from his body. Although this is sheer ignorance of the science of Krishna, some men make profit out of misleading people. There are some who are demoniac. They also think of Krishna, but enviously, like King Kamsa, Krishna's uncle. He was thinking of Krishna. He was also thinking of Krishna always, but he thought of Krishna as an enemy. He was always in anxiety, wondering when Krishna would come to kill him. That kind of thinking will not help us. One should be thinking of Krishna in devotional love. That is bhakti. One should cultivate the knowledge of Krishna continuously. What is that favorable cultivation? It is to learn from a bona fide teacher. Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and we have several times explained that his body is not material, but is eternal, blissful knowledge. This kind of talk about Krishna will help one become a devotee. Understanding Krishna otherwise, from the wrong source, will prove fruitless. One should therefore engage his mind in the eternal form the primal form of Krishna. With conviction in his heart that Krishna is the supreme, he should engage himself in worship. There are hundreds of thousands of temples in India for the worship of Krishna, and devotional service is practiced there. When such practice is made, one has to offer obeisances to Krishna. One should lower his head before the deity and engage his mind, his body, his activities, everything. That will make one fully absorbed in Krishna without deviation. This will help one transfer to Krishna Loka. One should not be deviated by unscrupulous commentators. One should engage in the 9 different processes of devotional service, beginning with hearing and chanting about Krishna. Pure devotional service is the highest achievement of human society. The 7th and 8th chapters of Bhagavad-Gita have explained pure devotional service to the Lord that is free from speculative knowledge, mystic yoga, and fruitive activities. Those who are not purely sanctified may be attracted by different features of the Lord, like the impersonal Brahma-jyoti and the localized Paramatma. But a pure devotee directly takes to the service of the Supreme Lord. There is a beautiful poem about Krishna in which it is clearly stated that any person who is engaged in the worship of demigods is most unintelligent and cannot achieve at any time the supreme award of Krishna. The devotee in the beginning may sometimes fall from the standard, but still he is considered superior to all other philosophers and yogis. One who always engages in Krishna consciousness should be understood to be a perfectly saintly person. His accidental, non-devotional activities will diminish, and he will soon be situated, without any doubt, in complete perfection. The pure devotee has no actual chance to fall down because the Supreme Godhead personally takes care of his pure devotees. Therefore, the intelligent person should take directly to the process of Krishna consciousness and happily live in this material world. He will eventually receive the supreme award of Krishna. Thus end the Bhakti-Vedanta purports to the 9th chapter of the Srimad Bhagavad-Gita in the matter of the most confidential knowledge. Engage your mind always in thinking of me, become my devotee, offer obeisances to me, and worship me. Being completely absorbed in me, surely you will come to me. But this is one of the just the handful of essential seminal verses in Bhagavad Gita. This embodies the objective of Krishna, the objective that we have in sadhana bhakti and in pursuing Krishna consciousness, pursuing transcendental knowledge of any sort. This embodies the objective and the conclusion. Krishna says, engage your mind always in thinking of me, become my devotee, offer obeisances to me, and worship me. Being completely absorbed in me, surely you will come to me. This is his guarantee. Srila Prabhupada, of course, starts off with in the purport, discussing the many various commentators and interpreters of Bhagavad Gita. Essentially, there are very few that accept, practically none of them accept Krishna at his word. They don't take Krishna at his word here. Generally, the Mayavadis, the Voidists, impersonalists will say that Krishna is referring to me, to himself, but actually he is just the outward manifestation of the single formless existence with no quality, with no attributes, and that somehow or other this basic nothingness has become something. As similar to the material scientists saying that, well, originally there was this, what do they call it? They call it a singularity, and it suddenly exploded, and here's what we have, the universe, and all this variety and all these bodies. And very similar to that is the Mayavad philosophy that the essential, ultimate, absolute truth is nothingness. But it's somehow or other, it's an energetic nothingness that can put itself into illusion, and that and we are each that nothingness in illusion. This is why Srila Prabhupada says, unfortunately, the unscrupulous commentators divert the mind of the reader to that which is not at all feasible. Something doesn't come from nothing. Last year in the city of Pushkar, out in Rajasthan, one evening I was chanting japa on a balcony, and a gentleman came along who was in the next room. This was at a hotel there. And he was curious as to what I was doing, and there was also another god sister of mine a few feet away who was also chanting japa and reading. And we spoke for a while. It turned out he was a biologist professional. He was probably late 40s, early 50s, and he was from Israel. He was just on a holiday, and he had come to a conference in Bombay, and then had just taken a bit of a holiday. He had questions, and we discussed for a while. And when he told me he was a biologist, I said, "Oh yes, we published a book some years ago called Life Comes from Life." And it was as if a monkey had thrown a rock at him and hit him in the head. He went, "Life comes from life." It just, the simple terminology to him made perfect sense. And he was, as we talked longer, I could see that he was a theistic man. He did believe in personal God. But generally material science is based on, if you can't see it or measure it, and somehow or other quantify it, which is measuring, and break it down into something that the mind, the material mind and material intelligence can comprehend, then it really is not, it can't really be real, it can't be actual. Whereas we know that there is a whole different realm, a whole different level of consciousness. In fact, pretty much the ultimate material scientists, these are particle physicists, theoretical physicists, many of them, including the originators of the quantum theory and quantum mechanics, they recognize that they cannot explain. There is no explanation, and that there's no explanation for consciousness, and that consciousness, they're understanding that it's the basis of just about everything. They're knocking on Krishna's door, but they're still trying to use the tools of material intelligence, the tools of material science. So here, Srila Prabhupada is saying also that these commentators who put out the impersonalist interpretations of Krishna, they don't know that science of Krishna. They don't know the true spiritual science of the absolute truth. That, of course, was a frequent area of discussion for Srila Prabhupada in his purports and conversations and classes, because then, as now, particularly early in the movement's history, there were a lot of, I guess you could say, competing yogis in America. Srila Prabhupada wasn't competing, but there had been a lot of several Ramakrishna mission people, Paramahansa Yogananda, and then there was, I can't even remember all the names, Yuktananda, Swami Yuktananda, and Swami Kriyananda, and this Swami, that Swami, and so this was something that a lot of younger people who Srila Prabhupada was addressing in those days had studied, had read, had perhaps considered themselves followers of these people. And Srila Prabhupada needed to dispel. Could you close the door, please? Thank you. Srila Prabhupada needed to dispel the idea that these people were actually spiritualists. Now, an impersonalist, a sincere impersonalist who comes to an understanding, that I'm not my body, which is the beginning of transcendental understanding, that's a transcendentalist. But there is so much more, we understand. There is so much more that it doesn't end there. And in the very first sentence here in the purport, Srila Prabhupada says, in this verse it is clearly indicated that Krishna consciousness is the only means of being delivered from the clutches of this contaminated material world. That's a very heady, that's a big statement. But we need to understand what is Krishna consciousness. Obviously, we're all trying to become Krishna conscious. And the fact is that Krishna consciousness, our own consciousness, individually and collectively, that is non-different from Krishna. The fact that our hearing right now, Krishna is hearing. Our seeing, all of the sense impressions that we get at this time, Krishna is getting, because we are parts of that consciousness. However, we're at the same time, we have the principle of achintya bheda bheda tattva, that we are one with Krishna, but we're also separate. But he is also separate, and he is perfect and complete. It's not that the sum total of all the consciousness of all the living entities adds up to Krishna. It's not. It is that simply we are all emanations from him, and the fact that I'm feeling my hand, seeing these things, being conscious of at this point sense perceptions, that consciousness is the connection. That is Krishna consciousness. If it's for us, with the logical mind, using proper intelligence, we can come to understand, even intellectually, we can come to understand the very basis of Krishna consciousness, the very basis of our actual existence, our actual consciousness at each and every moment. So Krishna is always with us, even the ant, even a mosquito. What to speak of a human being, what to speak of devotee. Krishna is favoring the devotees. He says he doesn't favor anyone, but as was made clear in this morning's Bhagavatam class, He doesn't favor anyone, but he is inclined to his devotees, just as I may not have any ill feelings or any animus towards anyone, towards a man on the street, a man out on the street. But if a man out on the street comes and offers me a fruit or anything like that, I'm not entirely indifferent to him. I will treat him more especially because he is serving. He's trying to serve me in some way. So with Krishna, it's the same way. The devotees have an advantage over most everyone else. And then the real heart of this verse is in this paragraph in the purport, and the text itself, just saying, always think of me, of Krishna. Arjuna asks what is the best way to think of Krishna? Well, we know that being engaged in service is in a bona fide devotional service as directed by the spiritual master, is, even if we're not totally blissed out, that is direct service to Krishna. That is devotional service. That is the path. And eventually we will come to understand, we will enter into that consciousness, and we'll enter into a relationship, an actual relationship, as Srila Prabhupada says in the purport, and in many places, that, the example he gives is your life may have many elements. Without Krishna, they're all zeros. But if you add Krishna, the one in front, then it can become millions or tens of millions. And the more you add Krishna, activities in Krishna consciousness, reading, the process of devotional service, as mentioned here, hearing, chanting being the basic ones. All the others are aspects of hearing and chanting and remembering Krishna. If one's hearing and chanting, then one's automatically remembering. By doing that, and the more we do that, the more of our time, the more of our energy goes into that, the less room there is for that which is not Krishna conscious, that which is not going to help us advance in spiritual life, advance towards our own actual best interests, which is to live our lives according to our true constitution, which is part and parcel of Krishna, servant of Krishna. And Sri Prabhupada describes those who may be on may be inclined spiritually, but are not more easily distracted, may become more attracted to impersonalism, which simply impersonalism is the desire to get out of the difficulties of the material world, and the faulty intelligence tells one that because the material world has qualities, has different features, and different activities, some of which result in pleasure, some of which result in pain, and such that just by if we can just negate everything, then we won't suffer anymore. We won't enjoy, but we won't suffer. And a lesser intelligence tells such people that those of lesser intelligence, as Srila Prabhupada says here, will think that, oh, that's a good thing. Just we get rid of all the suffering, and that is so they're attracted to different features. The impersonal Brahmajyoti, which is basically merging into the oneness with the Lord without recognizing the Lord, which of course can't last because one has to eventually engage in service. And then the yogis, the mystic yogis, their objective is to understand and to experience and to see the Lord who is within all of us and within everything, Paramatma, the localized Paramatma, but the Paramatma has expanded into everything, all the energy in the universe. And in the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, Patanjali specifically says that the Supreme Truth is an individual personality with his own form, and the description of that form is therein. But this is the objective of the sincere mystic yogis. Other yogis, their interest is in gaining mystical powers, levitation, and there are 8 categories of mystical powers, which are, they're quite mystical. They're quite extraordinary in human terms, but they're not an objective that's worthwhile. It's a material objective to gain those. It's a material objective to gain liberation, mere liberation from suffering, from the dualities of the material world. Our true interest lies in gradually coming to the understanding of Krishna as the Supreme Person, of ourselves as His servants, and to, again, engage more and more in that service and gradually be perfected by His grace. But the key to that, because we can't do that on our own. We can't just reading Bhagavad-Gita as it is, authorized scriptures, authorized, bona fide scriptures. We can't do that on our own. We need the living spiritual master as a guide. And that is essential. If we take a look at the history of, let's say, Christianity, Jesus was their Jagat Guru, and He's a Jagat Guru for us as well, universal spiritual master, universal teacher. Yet there is no pure following, no pure descendants expressing what His mission was and furthering His mission. Instead, there's a whole series of inventors, whole series of inventions of what His mission was, down to so now we have 2,000 plus years later, hundreds of varieties of so-called Christianity, hundreds of concepts of His mission. And it's because there's a lack of pure disciples, a pure disciplic succession coming down to carry the message as it originally was taught. And that is the advantage that we have with our sampradaya, or the disciplic succession, where each successive generation of teacher purely represents, Srila Prabhupada described it as being a transparent via media, simply bringing along and rebroadcasting exactly as what it was, as it was received, and it was as it was originally spoken in the original, or in the at the end of the introduction here in Bhagavad-Gita. There's a list of the our particular sampradaya, or disciplic succession, going all the way back to Krishna, all the way back to the Lord. And there are, that's Krishna, Brahma, the Manus, and so on, down to Madhvacharya, and later then Krishna appearing himself as Lord Chaitanya, appearing as a devotee into the age where people's lives are much shorter, the intellect is very much hindered, and so Krishna appeared in our line of succession. He appeared again as Lord Chaitanya, but he appeared as a devotee to teach how we can serve the Lord in this degraded age, and actually it can become a glorious age if we serve in that manner, as we increase our service in that way. And from Lord Chaitanya, then the 6 Goswamis, and coming down, Bhakti-Vinod Thakur, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta. And when we look back, on reading the writings of all of these, we don't find discrepancies between what we're receiving from Srila Prabhupada and what Bhakti-Vinod, or Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, or Srila Bhakti-Vinod, or any of the acharyas going back to Lord Chaitanya, then continuing even further back. We don't find any discrepancy. The discrepancies lie in, as Srila Prabhupada discusses, these people who are not devotees, are not comprehending, are not taking Krishna at his word. When he says me, he means me. He doesn't mean some unmanifest behind me. And Srila Prabhupada also refers again back to something earlier in this chapter, text 30 and 31. Text 30 was, even if one commits the most abominable action, if he is engaged in devotional service, he is considered saintly because he is properly situated in his determination. And the very following verse says, he quickly becomes righteous and attains lasting peace. Declare it boldly that my devotee never perishes. And in this purport that we've read today, Srila Prabhupada restates, the devotee in the beginning may sometimes fall from the standard, but still he is considered superior to all other philosophers and yogis. One who always engages in Krishna consciousness should be understood to be a perfectly saintly person. His accidental non-devotional activities will diminish, and he will soon be situated without any doubt in complete perfection. So that's also what we referred to earlier, that how his accidental non-devotional activities will diminish, because we are little specks of consciousness. And we don't have all of the qualities or all of the quantity or all of the qualities of Krishna. We have most of the qualities, but very little of the quantity. We only have a certain capacity. So if the accidental non-devotional activities diminish, how is that to happen? It's by increasing the devotional activities, just as we referred to before. Everything get the more devotional activity we perform, especially on a regulated basis, the less time we have to get in trouble, to get ourselves in trouble in material activities. And this verse is, as I said, it's one of the, if not the summary of Bhagavad-Gita, of all the instructions for us. It's among the several which are, of course, chapter 18, verse 66. Krishna concludes that just give up all varieties of religiosity, of different religion, and surrender unto me, and I have no fear, I will protect you. So engage your mind always in thinking of me, become my devotee, offer obeisances to me, and worship me. Being completely absorbed in me, you will surely come to me. Any comments, questions, additions, please? Yes? Oh yeah, we have the microphone.
As you said, Krishna is always with us, and I want to inquire about the thoughts which we are getting, the thoughts which we are coming in our mind. Sometimes good thoughts are there, sometimes bad thoughts are there. So whatever good thoughts is coming, we think that Krishna is giving, and whatever bad thoughts are coming, we are saying that we are doing. So can you give some clarification on that one?
Talking about good thoughts and bad thoughts in the mind. Well, the mind is, the uncontrolled mind is likened to a cage full of drunk monkeys. It's rather like trying to herd cats is another example. By devotional practices, we can gradually train the mind. The mind is meant to be our servant, not our master. And but the one who does not stay focused in Krishna consciousness, in sadhana bhakti, in the case of all of us here, stay focused in that and stay immersed within to the extent that we have understood these teachings and this philosophy and have taken it within our hearts. By remaining actively absorbed in that, the mind follows us. It's meant to follow us. We're not meant to follow it. Still, because the mind is the central distribution point for all of the sensory perceptions, and it also is the base, the home of dreams, of dreaming. Some people are dreamier than others, but the mind can still suggest, and I've always likened it to Maya Devi suggesting that we put some energy into following a particular thought, a particular attraction. Maybe it's an external attraction, a food, or a nice-looking woman or nice-looking man. Like that, these proposals are always coming into the mind. Generally, the more one becomes purified, the less that will occur, because one's doesn't care anymore, and the mind gets trained in that way. But again, in my current state, Maya suggests things into the mind, and I have to think of a lot of those things which are not conducive to my real interest. I need to think in terms of those have the reality of the shadow on the ground of a cloud that's maybe 40 kilometers away. That's about how real those things are in truth. But if we invest energy in something, I can't think of the exact quote, but it's where your attention goes, or where your attention goes, there's where your life goes. Your life goes in that way. So we want to keep our attention. We want to remain attentive to our real business, to our real interest.
You can say that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came as a bhakta avatar to give us bhakti. He's although he's a Krishna, but he came as to teach us the bhakti. So how we should think that he is a bhakta and he is coming as teaching us bhakti? Then we say, no, you are the Lord. We are glorifying as the Lord. Now you have come to give class, and I said you are just like Prabhupada, and I treat you as a Prabhupada. So can you give me some differences about those things?
I'm sorry, I don't quite understand what you're asking.
I am asking that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came as a bhakta avatar to give us bhakti. Bhakti, he is teaching us bhakti.
Right,
how
yes.
we should do Krishna's bhakti. But he is come as a teacher, but we glorify him as a Lord. We are glorifying him as he is a Lord. He is Krishna, he come here to give us bhakti. So he came as a bhakta avatar. So we should accept him as a bhakta avatar, or we should accept him as a Lord.
No, we accept him as the Lord. I mean, his appearance is presaged in certain of the Upanishads, and also in Bhagavatam, in Bhagavad Puranas, Bhagavad Purana, and that he came to also experience, to understand, to try to grasp the mood of Radharani in her service to him. And so but understand that that is really one purpose, and that is to bring us, to teach us, to give the example through the Goswamis, the 6 Goswamis and the predecessor acharyas, of how we serve him, how we can perfect our lives. So he appeared, yes, as his own devotee, but at the same time we recognize that he was Krishna himself, desiring to benedict us, to benefit us, the living entities, the human beings in the Kali Yuga, because we needed something very simple, very simple, very easily understood and easily performed, simply performed. As we find out, as we progress in our lives, we find out it's not really easy. If it was easy, we'd all be Mahabhagavats by now. But So it's not easy, but it is simple. It's simple to understand.
Somewhere, somebody calling you are a Krishna, so he closes his ears. He says, don't call me Krishna, don't call me Lord.
Right.
So what is the competency there? How can we understand that when Lord he doesn't want to hear that he is Lord, and we are still telling him that you are Lord. So can you translate?
Because he appeared in the mood of a devotee. A devotee is not going to, he said, lower than the straw in the street, more tolerant than the tree, lower than the straw in the street. That is not someone who's emulating that concept is not going to be. It's not going to like the idea of being called very great. Someone very great. Now, it may be part of his service. I'm sure that. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, and we know that Srila Prabhupada was called very great, Jagat Guru, like this. It didn't matter to him. That was an external, almost a relativity, not material, but a relativity that to him, because to Srila Prabhupada, for instance, Bhaktisiddhanta as well, that was just something that occurred. His mission was something entirely apart from any praise or even any apparent material opulence that arose. And that's an example for all of us. Many devotees, they come into some opulence as a result of maybe not opulence. Well, some come into opulence, and maybe some are born in with opulence, but they may come into some economic development, and it could be as a result of, it could be, we don't know, because Krishna can benedict the devotee as he sees fit. But and that's the principle of renunciation, is that whatever I have it's not my possession. So similarly, that kind of praise it's irrelevant to the individual. To us, we revere and pray to and worship our spiritual master and the predecessor spiritual masters and Krishna. Back here.
Thank you, Prabhu. I was just wondering, in the last paragraph, Srila Prabhupada says there's a beautiful poem about Krishna in which it is clearly stated that any person who is engaged in the worship of demigods is most unintelligent and cannot achieve at any time the supreme reward of Krishna. So I was wondering if you know, or anybody maybe knows what poem he's referring to.
I wondered that myself, and I asked Bhakti, who gave Bhagavatam class, Bhakti Gauravani Maharaj, that too, because I had glanced at this when I saw that, because originally this class this evening was going to be on the first chapter, verse of the 10th canto, 10th chapter, but it got changed, so I had glanced at it last night. I was wondering, why isn't that poem identified? And he didn't know either. And I asked Panchagoda Prabhu too. He said didn't know. It's a poem about Krishna.
The only thing I would think is maybe Dhammastika, it doesn't seem to directly relate.
No. Yeah, I'm at a loss on that one too. I'm sure somebody knows, but the message there is, we kind of touched on that those who are engaged in the worship of demigods or even just other philosophical systems that are half-baked. They're half-baked, and people are, their intelligence is crippled, and so they may be attracted to such partial understandings, or they may be completely bogus understandings. And the other factor here also is that when Krishna says thinking about me, he mentions Kamsa, and we can also think of Shishupal in Krishna Lila, that always thinking of Krishna as your enemy, as Kamsa did, that's not recommended for us. He's always thinking of Krishna, but he's not thinking of, as Srila Prabhupada said, he's not thinking of Krishna in devotional love. And Shishupal was always thinking of Krishna in envy. Just envied Krishna, wanted to imitate, and that's not recommended for devotional service either. Any other comments, questions, corrections? I appreciate corrections. All right, thank you. Hare Krishna.